Yeah, hello everyone. Today we're going to be having a look at a tweet I put out sort of in the middle of the day, and it's only been like 4 or 5 hours on it, and it is doing some numbers. Now, this is one of those fairly divisive tweets, and it's on screen now, and I'll go through it in a minute. I'm going to go down the entire feed and take out some interesting stuff to talk about. But the premise is that ever since we had Duke mining, which was basically a 10k XP an hour for 6 hours, which required setup but not maintenance, this was clearly broken, but players took advantage of it and really enjoyed the AFK mining XP. And now after it got removed, they buffed shooting stars so that it doesn't deplete anymore when multiple players are on. And now there's this whole thing where shooting stars and this whole AFK style, tons and tons of players are both making use of it and enjoying it, and liking the fact that there's an easy way to train mining. And of course there are some super skill purists that are like, no, you have to put an effort for everything you do, as I click my anglerfish once every 10 seconds or every minute even. And we're going to go through and have a look at some of this anyway. But this whole thing was basically a bit of a pot stir, which I intentionally worded it as, just to get the ball rolling and see what people would say. And for what it's worth, I don't actually think every skill even needs these methods, or I think they already exist in game, which is what I'm doing right now. But the point here is that, well, I'll read the tweet. There's been a lot of discourse about skilling updates in forestry and mining over the last month, so let's add some more to it. Kind of, again, intentional. Every skill should have a 20k XP an hour idle method. Before we move on, I'm going to define idle here. I would say clicking maybe once to 2 times per minute. Let's say up to 3 times per minute. So anywhere from 1 to 3 times per minute for 20k XP. Nothing crazy. Nothing much more than that. You can wiggle. There's a little bit of wiggle room there if you like, but you know, I would say that Duke mining is too much. Star mining is like honestly a bit too much, but it's fine for what it is. When I'm talking about like relatively AFK methods, just click once every minute even, and that's all it is. So when we're talking through this thread, bear that in mind. And all I've said is I don't see how this would harm competitive skillers, which it won't, because it would take you something like, I think I wrote down the number somewhere, but it's some stupid amount of hours. It's like, it's over 100,000 hours to get 200 mil or 100,000 hours. No one's doing that. So it cannot harm competitive skilling. And anyone who was actually competitive skilling would set one of these up anyway and do them anyway if they wanted to, or just do the meta methods. And it wouldn't devalue 99s either. Mostly because getting 99, if you look at the next bit here, maxing an account would take 13,000 hours, or 6 years at 6 hours a day doing these methods. If you think that denying someone the ability to max an account in that fashion is fine, I don't know what to say. I mean, you have access to XP in hours of over 1 million for certain skills, 2 million nowadays, and players care about 20k XP an hour? I think not. Or you are hella gatekeeping, is my professional opinion here. Now, the bigger effect, the more important one, players who genuinely hate certain skills. And make no mistake, there are plenty of players who do enjoy skilling, and that's great. But there are plenty of players, if not a majority of players, who don't really want to interact with skilling beyond trying to get something the skill offers by training to a certain level. They don't actually enjoy the process. They enjoy the reward. But these players would have a mean to train it, albeit at a time cost. They're still putting something in. They're putting their own time in. You could better spend that time. You could be grinding out items, or you could be doing faster XP methods to get ahead of other players if you want to. So you are still putting a cost in. You are still putting effort into the game. You are still putting time in. And to level 80, which is where it really starts to matter, because level 80 is about where like all the big stuff takes off. It's enough to get quest cape minus maybe like 1 skill, I don't know. But that's 100 hours per skill. That's a lot of time. And when we're comparing old school to other games, yes, it's a grind game. Yes, you should put some more time in. But 100 hours per skill across 21 skills? Over 2,000 hours to get to level 80. Let that sink in. Most players probably don't have 2,000 hours in any given game these days. Maybe like 1 game. But to get to level 80, which is not even 1/5 of maxing, it would take you more time than you would probably ever put in anywhere else. This is why this kind of 20k XP an hour from star mining and potentially other skills simply doesn't impact players. And I think it's pretty hard to say otherwise on that. But let's have a look at some of the actual comments that have come up, and we'll go through some of the threads. So, DKHO, this was an interesting one. Agree if people want to sit on their ass for 5x longer, twiddling thumbs, doing something else, but it could be a slippery slope. And this is a fair one, because granted, if some of this comes into the game, what's to say that down the road maybe they add like a 50k XP an hour, or 100k XP the hour? Well, maybe. But maybe not, and I don't see why people have to be sort of doomer about this. Old School has stayed pretty stuck to its roots, and I think the team understands very well as to what the game direction should be going in. Now, there are plenty of people who have distrust for Jagex, but grow up, I guess. They've done a pretty good job, and the recent updates, the recent few years have been very good as far as sort of having better and better updates. Yes, the engines are shit, yes, the QA's shit, yes, there's bots running about, but it doesn't change the fact that the direction of the game has stayed very stable, if not improved. So, I don't think it's a problem to consider the slippery slope here. I don't think they're going to let it get out of hand. And denying good things just because of some potentially negative bad thing that's not likely to happen, I think that's, again, very doomer and very sort of stunting of growth. It's not good for the game health overall. And yeah, if people complain it's too slow, maybe introduce it with a caveat. Maybe say that, like, these methods will never exceed X amount of XP an hour. You know, you can just set it up like that. And I don't think it's too hard to state that ahead of time. And this one here is, this next part is not a good argument. Would you feel the same if people asked for easy mode Inferno? Kill 20 mole for Zuck tasks. Or 20 baby Zucks. I read this as baby moles, I don't know why. But baby Zucks for Infernal Cape. This one's the bad argument, and a lot of people are bringing this up. And that's because Infernal Cape is not something that you need to do other things. It will help you, but it's not a necessity. But if I want to do DS2, I need 70 mining. There's no two ways about that. Skilling actually unlocks things in this game. So you have to be very careful when you set limits. And again, this is mostly like quest cape stuff, but it's still the fact that higher levels of skilling will unlock better things for you. For example, 85 mining for the Aka room, or potentially 99 thieving for chambers. Higher woodcutting for chambers. A lot of stuff plays into raids and other bosses and unlocks and stuff these days. So you have to be aware that skilling is an unlock to more stuff, especially PVM. I'll take a quick break here to say the fact that, you know, of course, not everyone really cares to PVM, but nowadays PVM is getting extremely popular, especially with TOA from 1 year ago, bringing a whole bunch of players who weren't really interested in the raids scene, who are now like, you know, 400, 500, 600 KC TOA, have started to dip their feet into chambers, starting to do top now. And there's been a huge explosion of new players who are interested in this stuff and are feeling locked behind skills. 85 mining, or now Rex for chambers. And yes, players want to get to max, and helping them along the way isn't a bad thing either. For maybe the one skill they can AFK to 99 for 500-600 hours. But at the end of the day, skilling is locking PVM. PVM is not locking anything. And ultimately, this does come down to a false equivalence. Many players don't enjoy certain skills. This is about offering a non-harmful, nearly said it, a non-harmful alternative that doesn't devalue competitive skilling, which I maintain it still doesn't. Offering 20, I said moles here, but offering 20, you know, mini Zucks for a cape would devalue Inferno. And they've been quite careful not to devalue Inferno over the years. Or try not to. Obviously, new gear will devalue that, but that's a different story. And, yeah, it's 23,000 hours to 200 mil all, for what it's worth. We move down a little bit, and then ultimately it's like, you know, you want to get people raid ready, that's what this is about, and DK gets it, which is fine. But yeah, let's move back to the next bit. There's so many things in this thread, it's quite interesting. Okay, generally agree. Effort involved should always match the XP output, though. I agree, plus or minus some wiggle room. Which is why, like, these XP an hours, I said 20k XP an hour, but it could be, like, less. It could be 5k an hour, 10k an hour, I don't really care. But I agree with what he's saying. And ultimately, needs to be tailored with respect to the best available methods. So, for example, with mining being, like, 110k XP an hour, best, and same for runecrafting, if you bring out, like, a 50k XP an hour AFK method, that's terrible. But if you compare that to construction and do like a 50k XP an hour, maybe with a GP sync or something, that's fine, because construction exceeds 1 million XP an hour. You'd be crazy to want to do the AFK method, so it may as well be a good one. So of course this is something to bear in mind if they ever choose to make more AFK type skills. And that's fair enough. Mandrew, Wouldn't harm competitive XP rates. Okay, great. But it would feel unnatural for the game. Yes, it probably would feel a little bit, but, you know, again, I'm literally clicking an anglerfish like once a minute here, and that's it. That's all I do. This isn't something that is new to the game. It would just be new for the different skills that don't have this kind of thing yet. So I don't think it would be that unnatural. I mean, there's been AFK stuff since the dawn of RuneScape, more or less, just in different forms. And more importantly, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Well, this is the entire point. It is broke. Players don't actually enjoy training skills. And I guarantee you there's no one with 200 mil all who is still training skills because they love skilling so much. That's not a thing. They do it competitively, not because they like the method or the skill. They might also just be hella burnt from making a bad choice on what to go for. But the point is, most skilling methods aren't actually that interesting. And it's what you're after in terms of the XP or what it unlocks for you. That's the interesting thing. That's the thing that people grind for. Now, ideally, you make the grind enjoyable as well, or you add some incentive at certain points along the way. That makes it interesting to go for, but really striving for a skilling method that's fun is the play here. But yeah, going into Mandrew's thing, gathering skills combat has always had AFK methods. Well, yeah, so would it really feel unnatural for the game? It's already had those things, no? Like star mining, except it causes server lag. Of course, like, I don't like the server lag either, and I hope they'll come up with a fix for it. But that's, you know, completely separate. Forestry is air, had already 35 mil from redwoods. Then you're not part of the problem here. You're not really target problem here. The target player base that we're looking at is really players from level 25, 30, all the way up to level 80. That mid-game level where you really have, like, no interesting things to do. And it's like, I click tree, or I click iron rock. Haha, and that's my entire life until I'm level 80. That's less fun. Obviously, quests help a lot, but it doesn't get you all the way there. And you shouldn't have to be forced into this efficient questing route to get to where you need to get to. Yes, it's like a good path and recommended, but no, we shouldn't be telling players, like, you have to quest. Just strong recommendation. And maybe do some AFK mining on the side. Yeah, this is a bit separate from the point at hand here. Let's run back and have a look at some more. Puff here. Can't people just play Melville? Melvin is Melville Idol, which is basically an idle version of RuneScape. That's like the extreme. And yeah, it's like, you know, can't they just play this idle version of RuneScape if they don't want to play the game? Seems dumb to avoid playing it at all costs instead of playing something else. Granted, players should probably play a variety of games and do what's fun. But it comes down, again, to the fact that skilling generally isn't that fun for most players. So why not alleviate some of that at no cost to anybody? And that means that players who might otherwise drop the game because they're really fucking bored of it actually manage to get an extra 4 or 5 levels that push them onto new content that gets them hooked on maybe PVM progression, which is what so many people are into nowadays. There are plenty of players playing other MMOs, other online big games, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, where they're getting sped through. Even Lost Ark now is doing a fresh start that gets you, like, raid ready immediately. All these games that players are maybe looking at old school at for a bit more serious progression, and then realizing that actually it's really difficult to get there. It's just not fun and it's kind of horrible. There's a lot of people in that position who end up wanting to play the game and then get stuck. 60 agility, 50 mining, bored as fuck. It's about those players. And it's about the long-term health for the game that this kind of thing is fairly important to either discuss or try and implement. So, you know, yeah, maybe the game sucks, in which case people shouldn't play it, but there are really fun parts to old school, and that shouldn't be ignored. Also, this is like the best comment in the entire thread. I do love Puff, though. Some good takes. And RIP Frog. Moving down. Every raid should have 1 raid completed per 6 hours idle method. Don't see how it would devalue raids KC or affect item prices at all. Well, you shouldn't get purples, but personally, I'm completely okay with it. If you want KC and you need to work towards something, I mean, to be fair, players already AFK raids. Plenty of players get carried or sit in chambers. It's not too surprising, really. Maybe I'm a bit of an odd one out on PVMers for this, but I genuinely don't really care about KC. I care about, like, 2k raid capes, and if you want to work towards that slowly, sure, if it's going to take you 6 hours, I don't care at all. And maybe people are concerned or, like, weirded out that I don't see the problem with that, but I don't. at the end of the day, if you want to work towards something and you hate it, give them an idle method. But again, the point is you can already do that for raids if you want to. You can just do raids slowly, you know? And yeah, granted, maybe a lot of people don't agree, but that's still my position. But yeah. Ian, embrace the AFKing, fully agree. It's good to know there are some like hard defenders of it as well. This one, I generally like Autumn but his takes have been increasingly bad. Not to be too mean to him, but if I go to his page, there was some horrendous one. This one here. Every raid boss should have a fully idle 10 to 20% efficient method. Inferno should be done idle in 10 hours. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do much other than scroll down to see all the people who don't really agree with this. Horrifically shit take. Horrifically shit take. Don't understand how this can be remotely analogous. What if I told you there was an efficient one? Well, yeah. Turns out there is. This pretty much already exists. I love your dedication, but your takes are neurotic and bad. Get the point, but this doesn't work as an example. Consistently bad takes, cringy elitist. I'm not gonna lie, again, I like the guy, but he kind of is. And the rest of the thread is pretty much the same thing. Scaling and PVM are not equal sides of the same coin, and I'm glad people get this when it's made really obviously bad. So, unfortunate for Autumn, but yeah, I'm not even gonna bother paying that one any attention. Moving down, Levine. Oh yes. I responded to this one recently, but let's have a look. You think gear and weapons should be cheaper and have lower costs associated with them because it makes the game more accessible? Correct. I like this. This is what I want. According to you, people shouldn't have to grind. No, that's not really the case. The grind starts when you get to raiding level and you actually start building up your bank. The first part, this is something I do care about. This is about getting players raid ready. This is about preparing them for actually being able to do high-level content. It's about moving them from low-level players through the mid-game efficiently and starting endgame, which is where the fun begins. That's what I want people to get interested in. Now, that's not the grind. The grind is once you get there. Yes, like, okay, granted, there's a bit of a grind on the way there, but that shouldn't, like, you shouldn't have to go through a ton of shit to enjoy the good stuff. It should be smooth sailing, or maybe slow but AFK, or really fun, hence the increased XP, or more skilling fun, or more skilling AFK. 3 options remain the same. And as for some very odd takes, yeah, maybe I do, but they're damn good. Walls here kind of gets it. He wants easier lower entry to a bigger number of players can get good at a faster pace. Yes. Want the average level of the player base to rise so we can get more of the good stuff. Exactly. Walls damn well gets it. Levine? Addy doesn't really like there's a large wealth gap. He wants items to be accessible to everyone because if you eliminate the wealth gap, then it exclusively becomes about skill, not wealth. This is definitely part of it. I do want there to be more of a skill gap, but more so in the sense that players who always complain like, you're doing Inferno with a twisted bow, why don't you show it with a bow for once? Well, firstly, I do that, but secondly, less players would complain about that kind of thing if the wealth gap was closer. Now, I'm not saying that players should have access to a twisted bow, and I clarified it here, saying, you know, you're over-focusing on the wealth gap. I want players to get their hands on basic raiding gear, not T-bows and scythes. And granted, that's probably more of a healthy position to clarify on. But yeah, Mega Res should be expensive. This should be the grindy part. If you want a big weapon, you should go out and grind it. But the grind, again, isn't about getting to that stage. Like, you should be able to get a decent set of gear. Like, I don't know, I guess a Fang nowadays is fairly cheap, but like, it is good in the sense that Fang is cheap. It gets players a decent weapon to start PvMing. Despite all the faults of Fang, it does a good job in that regard. And more items in that position, so that you can start raiding, is good. So, I don't know, this is a bit separate from the idea, but yeah. Let's see what else is in this thread. There's a few things. But there is definitely more players who are saying, like, you know, all these methods would become 50k, 100k, so on. I think this is still doomer, same as what I said before. And this is an important one. Don't understand how people can disagree with the take. Pretty tame and harmless. And then ultimately it's, old school is a safe space. Touch it and they'll treat you like you burned down their house. This is true. I'm just super into this one, unfortunately. Old school, I think, this is a really interesting point, is that when they brought back old school, I think a lot of players really thought there were never going to be any updates. They thought it was just going to be how it used to be, and that's it. Dead end. And I don't think that was really the mission of what they were trying to do. They were trying to bring back the game in the original style and maintain it with updates that were fitting to that style, which is what they've been doing all these years. Why would they come back with a development team if not to do that? And yes, the game has changed a lot, but players still feel nostalgic, killing bosses that weren't even back there in the day. So there's some interesting stuff here, but at the end of the day, I think players are very not open to change still, which is shocking because we're like 10 plus years on. And it's important to really consider that change is generally quite good. And if it's bad, you can always fix it. But it's rarely going to be like an overall negative. For what it's worth, one thing like Forestry Part 1 I think was fantastic. More MMO-esque mechanics on trees. More like, you know, group activity good. But too complex, Part 2, granted. Definitely a bit too complex. We also have the Jebrim post. If you want to read this, it's on Twitter. I am not going to go into it. It is kind of wild. But it is Jebrim. And then there's a bunch more stuff. It's called skilling, not AFKing. I will simply click my anglerfish and continue skilling while I read this. It's called skilling, not AFKing. Not everything needs to be made brain dead just because. Some skills are more intensive than others, and that's okay. It's always been that way. Yeah, this is not about the intensity, it's about the fun factor. It's about actually wanting to play the game and perhaps understanding the methods are bad, same as always. So this is completely separate, really. Autumn about to have a heart attack? Yep, they sure have. Let's see what else there is. Skilling updates have to come in at some point. Making low intensity methods is part of how the cycle works. Yep. As I'm doing right now, I'm just going to click my anglerfish and chill. They don't want to be forced to interact with a skill in only one way. This isn't 2003. Yeah, so some variety is good at the end of the day. And a lot of these methods already have these AFK things. It's too late to say don't add them, they're here. And variety is good. You want players to enjoy all different things. There's no one right way to train a skill, just in the same way that players saying, like, go do quest cape right now, doesn't mean that you should have to go and do a quest cape if you really hate questing. Take a break, go train some AFK thing, relax. It's a game, it's meant to be fun again. What really devalues skilling is bossing, dropping resources and bots. As people complain about mining when there was money to be made from it, time spent should be value. This is absolutely true. Jagex needs to crack down on bots, and that's been the case for many years. I would definitely enjoy, you know, if I can press the button that deletes all the bots, giving power back to the players to go and farm resources would be great. Knowing that you're getting money from something that you don't really like still increases the enjoyment factor. So granted, this is a big one. And I don't know how you solve that other than deleting the hell out of bots, or making a method that is super difficult, but that's a different story. I'm trying to get to some of the comments that say basically bad take, and if anything with good take here, I'm probably going to ignore. But yeah. Idle bad, remove redwoods, remove stars, make skilling great again. Yes, I can see everyone agrees with this. This isn't Melville Idol. I think these people are generally missing the point at this point. But yeah. This is the thing. Everyone says go do another game or go play Melville. That's not the point. Players actually enjoy old school. There are lots more things to old school than skilling, and unfortunately for the skillers, a lot of that stuff is reliant on skilling. So it's understandable for players to want to change how the skilling works a little bit, albeit again, not devaluing the high end. That's what this is all about. God Tormentor, big skiller here. Big disagree. Some skills should not be AFKable at all. AFKable options for everyone, for everything, completely murders the prestige of skilling. Some achievements should have no easy way out. This sounds like elitist skilling to me. The idea of prestige of skilling. I would understand this if you're going for 200 mil all, maybe maxing, but as covered previously at the very start of the video, the XP rates at 20k an hour are abysmally slow. And if he truly thinks that I'm if I'm stepping all over 200 mil all skillers with my 230,000 hour process of getting there, he is deranged, to say the least. So, sorry, but no. There's no prestige in skilling when you're doing it 20k XP an hour. I'm not murdering any prestige of skilling. That's delusional. Moving on from any Melville Idol ones here. You shouldn't have to be able to idle for full 25 minutes. I agree. As covered before, 1 to 2 to 3 clicks every minute sounds about right. In fact, what I'm doing right now, Anglerfish, kind of fits the bill. Awful take. If people don't want to play the game, why should they benefit? Because players do want to play the game. But skilling, again, is a gateway to those things. And they don't like skilling. So let's make skilling fun. There's many posts like this, not to pick on him too much, but there's too many players who don't understand the fact that skilling is a pathway to other things. And that you're reliant on having to skill to get there. And it's not the fact that they don't like the skilling, it's that they want to do other things, and they have to go through skilling to get there. That is the problem. Fundamentally, that's the problem. So if you in the comments have any things about this, like, remember that's the point. How do you get players who actually enjoy some of the other parts of the game to get there in a reasonable fashion without hating the process? That's the point. But, yeah. Everyone gets a trophy vibes. Everyone gets a trophy vibes? Not so much Bailey, sorry. There's a lot of these going down, but I think that's covered the most of it. At the end of the day, this point about, making sure that skilling is ultimately fun, or that getting to different places in skilling, the high-end stuff for PVM, the starting point at least, is accessible. That's the bigger part of this. And all of these, unless it's in agreement, most of them tend to be just a bit silly, really. Another one from Tom Badom. That would make every skill able to be trained in the exact same way for it to be balanced. That would just make every skill able to be trained in the exact same way for it to be balanced. I'm not sure I even understand this one. Of course you can, I mean, what's the difference between me fletching and me clicking in anglerfish here? At the end of the day, I'm doing a click in my inventory to train fletching, and a click on the anglerfish spot to train fishing. Yes, skills are trained in the exact same way. Time to get over it. It's been that way since the dawn of time. And I think we're just about there. This thread is kind of crazy, and it goes a lot more in depth, and I'm getting replies like every 3 seconds. So, yeah, these, debates from 15 years ago are still going strong. This isn't the first time. It's just that it's being brought up again due to the star mining. But it is always crazy to see who leaps in defense of it, or who is for it nowadays. I'm happy to say that most players, I think, understand. There's a lot more support these days. And I think the game is generally going in a good direction. And for what it's worth to end off, I don't really think we need all these AFK methods. But I do think that, like the fishing one here, adding a couple more to a few skills, just to alleviate the pain and suffering of things like agility, especially from levels 30 to 70, is pretty reasonable. So I think I'll leave off there. Pretty nice long ramble. And we're going to be working on some PVM videos in the next few days. Need to get one up for the top things. Going to be working on some rebuild stuff, so keep an eye out for them as well. But see you guys later.